I stood frozen at the bank counter, my hands trembling as I gripped the withdrawal slip. The teller, a young woman with kind eyes, looked at me with a mix of pity and hesitation. "Mrs. Larson," she said softly, "the balance in your joint savings account, it's only $15. $15, my heart stopped. That account was supposed to hold $250,000. Our retirement fund. The safety net Michael and I had spent 8 years building every skipped dinner out. Every extra shift I took, every dream we put on hold. It was our future, our security. And now it was gone. I managed to choke out, "There must be a mistake." "Can you check again?" She nodded, her fingers flying across the keyboard. But her face didn't change. "I'm sorry," she said after a moment. "The funds were withdrawn 2 weeks ago. The transaction was authorized by your husband, Michael Larson." It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My knees buckled, and I gripped the counter to steady myself. Michael, my Michael, the man I'd trusted for 15 years. The man who kissed me goodnight every evening and promised we'd grow old together. I drove home in a daze, the world blurring past me. My mind kept replaying the teller's words, each one a fresh stab. When I walked through the front door, Michael was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone, oblivious. I didn't even take off my coat. "Michael," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "What happened to our savings?" He barely looked up. "What are you talking about, Sarah?" I stepped closer, my hands shaking. "Our retirement fund. $250,000. It's gone. The bank said you withdrew it." His eyes flicked up, and for a split second, I saw something guilt, maybe. But then he shrugged, like it was nothing. "Yeah, I gave it to Mom. She needed it for her house in Florida. You know how much she's sacrificed for me?" "What's the big deal?" "The big deal." I felt like I'd been slapped. "That was our money, Michael. We saved it together. For us, for emergencies, for our future." He rolled his eyes, leaning back like I was overreacting. "God, Sarah, why are you so dramatic? Mom's getting older. She deserves to live a little. I'm her only son, it's my job to take care of her. You wouldn't understand. You've always had it easy." Easy. I wanted to scream. I'd worked 60-hour weeks as an accountant, balancing ledgers until my eyes burned, while he managed a warehouse and spent his evenings watching football. I'd clipped coupons, skipped vacations, poured every extra cent into that account, and now he was telling me I didn't understand sacrifice. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Michael, that money was for us. For our life. What if something happens? What if we need it?" He stood up then, his face hardening. "You're so selfish, Sarah. Always thinking about yourself. Mom raised me alone after Dad died. She gave up everything. If I want to help her buy a house, I will. It's my money too." I stared at him, the man I'd loved for over a decade, and felt something crack inside me. This wasn't just about the money. It was about trust, about respect, about the life we'd promised each other. And he'd thrown it all away for his mother, Helen. The woman who spent her days sailing on luxury cruises and sipping cocktails with her theater friends. The woman who called herself a retired actress but hadn't stepped on a stage in 20 years. The woman who could cry on cue and make Michael believe she was the victim of a cruel world. I turned and walked to the bedroom, my chest tight. I didn't know what hurt more, the betrayal or the realization that I'd been blind to it for so long. But there was something Michael didn't know. Something I'd learned just days before at the hospital, when the doctor pulled me aside. After his checkup, a secret I wasn't ready to share. Not yet, because sometimes, the truth is a weapon, and I was starting to think I'd need it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Michael's snores filling the room like nothing had happened. My mind kept spinning, replaying his words, "It's my money too." As if my years of sacrifice meant nothing. As if I hadn't given up dreams of my own to build that nest egg with him. But what hurt most wasn't the money. It was the realization that the man I'd married, the man I thought I knew, was slipping away. Or maybe he'd never been who I thought he was. I met Michael when I was 40, just after I'd sworn off dating for good. I was an accountant then, buried in spreadsheets, living a quiet life in Portland. He was a warehouse manager, charming in that rough around the way, with a laugh that could light up a room. We met at a friend's barbecue, where he spilled beer on my shoes and spent the rest of the night apologizing with bad jokes. I couldn't help but laugh. He was different, grounded, dependable, the kind of man who showed up when he said he We dated for 4 years, taking our time. Everyone said we were a perfect match. Two practical people, no drama, no rush. When we got married at 44 and 45, it felt like the start of something solid. We bought a house, a cozy 3-bedroom with a garden I loved tending. We planned for retirement, dreaming of road trips along the coast, maybe even a little cabin by the sea someday. We weren't flashy people. We didn't need much. Just each other, or so I thought. But there was always Helen. Michael's mother Helen was 78. Now, a retired actress who'd never quite made it big, but carried herself like she had. She'd been in a few local plays back in the day, nothing major, but you'd think she'd starred on Broadway the way she talked. She had this way of commanding a room, her voice lilting like she was always performing. At first, I liked her. She was vibrant, full of stories about her glory days, but it didn't take long to see the other side of Helen, the side that demanded attention. Money, and loyalty, especially from Michael. Helen had raised Michael alone after his father passed away when he was 10. She never let him forget it. Every conversation with her ended in some tearful tale of sacrifice. How she'd worked 2 jobs. How she'd given up her dreams of fame. How she'd poured her life into him. Michael ate it up. He'd get this guilty look in his eyes, like he owed her the world. And Helen knew exactly how to pull that string. Over the years, I watched her chip away at our marriage, bit by bit. It started small, Michael buying her expensive gifts, like a diamond bracelet for her 70th birthday, even though we were saving for a new roof. Then it got bigger. He'd lend her money for emergencies that never seemed to end, a car repair, a medical bill, a sudden trip to clear her head. I'd ask him how much, and he'd brush me off. It's just family, Sarah, don't make it a thing. But it was a thing. I started noticing withdrawals from our joint account, 100 here, 1,000 there. When I brought it up, Michael would get defensive. She's my mom, Sarah. What am I supposed to do? Let her struggle. I'd bite my tongue, not wanting to fight. Helen didn't visit often, maybe once or twice a year, so I told myself it wasn't worth the battle. I'd adjust, I'd manage. I always did. But last year, things changed. Helen started coming around more, staying for weeks at a time. She'd breezed into our house with her designer sunglasses and perfume that lingered for days. Talking about her latest cruise or her plans to buy a house in Florida. I deserve to live a little, she'd say, winking at Michael. Don't you think, sweetheart? He'd nod, hanging on her every word. I started feeling like a stranger in my own home. Helen would make little digs about my cooking, my clothes, the way I kept the house. Oh, Sarah, you're so practical, she'd say, like it was an insult. Michael never stood up for me. He'd just laugh it off, like it was all a big joke. I'd smile through it, but inside, I was seething. Then, 2 weeks ago, everything shifted. Michael and I went for our annual checkups, just routine stuff. I was in the waiting room, flipping through a magazine, when the doctor asked to see me alone. He closed the door, his face serious, and slid a file across the desk. This is about your husband, he said. We found something in his tests. It's his heart. He's got severe congestive heart failure. Without a transplant, he may not have long. I sat there, numb. Michael was 53. We were supposed to have decades left. The doctor explained it all, how Michael would need surgery, how we'd need to find a donor, how expensive it would be. I nodded, barely hearing him. All I could think was, we have the savings. We'll be okay. That's why I went to the bank that day. I was going to withdraw part of our $250,000 to cover the initial costs. I thought we'd face this together, like we always had, but when the teller told me the account was empty, it wasn't just the money that broke me, it was the lie. Michael had taken everything, our future. Our trust, and handed it to Helen without a word. I didn't tell him about the heart condition, not that night, not the next day. I couldn't. Every time I looked at him, I saw Helen's smug smile, her voice echoing in my head. I deserved to live a little. I saw Michael's indifference, his willingness to throw me aside for her, and something inside me hardened. I wasn't sure what I'd do with the secret, but I knew one thing. I wasn't ready to save him, not when he'd spent years choosing her over me. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. Michael was already gone, probably off to work, leaving me alone with the weight of what I'd learned. $250,000 gone. His heart condition a secret I wasn't ready to share. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee untouched, trying to piece together what to do. That's when I heard the front door open. Sarah, sweetheart. Helen's voice rang out, syrupy and sharp, like a stage actress overplaying her part. I froze, my fingers tightening around the mug. She wasn't supposed to be here. She'd been in Florida, or so Michael said, living it up in her new beach house. But there she was, breezing into my kitchen with her oversized sunglasses and a scarf that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Michael's at work, I said, my voice flat. What do you want, Helen? She waved a hand, dismissing my tone. Oh, don't be so cold, dear. I just popped by to see my favorite son. And you, of course. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I was telling Michael we need to talk about something important. Why don't you sit with us later? Family matters, you know. Family matters. The words made my skin crawl. I knew what that meant, another one of her schemes. I didn't respond, just watched her settle onto the couch like she owned the place. I retreated to the bedroom, closing the door, but my ears were sharp. I needed to know what she was up to. An hour later, Michael came home early. I heard his heavy footsteps, then his voice, low and warm. Mom, you didn't have to come all this way. You okay? Oh, Michael, Helen said, her tone shifting to that practiced quiver she'd perfected over the years. I'm not getting any younger. These trips to Florida, they're wearing me down. The house is lovely, but it's not enough. I've been thinking, a yacht, a small one, nothing too fancy. Just something to sail along the coast. Live my golden years the way I've always dreamed. I pressed my ear against the door, my heart pounding. A yacht. Was she serious? Michael hesitated. Mom, those things cost a fortune. I mean, I gave you the $250,000 for the house. That was everything we had. Everything you had. Helen's voice sharpened, then softened again, like she'd caught herself. Sweetheart, I raised you alone. No father, no help. I gave up my career, my life, for you. Don't you want your mother to be happy? I'm not asking for much. Just $350,000. There's a yacht I found us to steal at that price. I've got a friend who'll cover the rest with a loan. $350,000. I nearly laughed out loud, a bitter, hollow sound. She'd already burned through our life savings, and now she wanted more. I waited for Michael to say no, to finally see through her. But he didn't. I don't know, Mom, he said, his voice shaky. Sarah's already upset about the savings. She went to the bank yesterday, freaking out. I don't think we can, Sarah. Helen cut him off, her tone dripping with disdain. That woman's always been too uptight, always counting pennies, like money's more important than family. You're the man of the house, Michael. You don't need her permission to do what's right. Besides, you've got that big house, don't you? Sell it. You'll have more than enough. Sell our house. The house we'd spent years paying off. The one I'd poured my heart into. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I flung the bedroom door open and stormed into the living room. Their faces froze, like deer caught in headlights. Sell the house, I said, my voice trembling with rage. Are you out of your mind, Helen? That $250,000 was our money, Michael, ours. And you gave it to her without even telling me. Now she wants to sell our home for a yacht? Michael's face turned red. Sarah, calm down. You're making this a bigger deal than it is? A bigger deal? I laughed, sharp and joyless. You drained our retirement fund. That was for us, for emergencies, for our future. And now, you're scheming with her to take everything else. Helen stood up, her lips pursed like she was about to deliver a monologue. Sarah, dear, you're being selfish. Michael's my only son. He's all I have. I raised him, gave him everything. Don't you think he owes me a little happiness? I turned to her, my eyes narrowing. Happiness. You've been living like a queen while we've been scraping by. That money was for emergencies, Helen. Like medical bills. Like the ones Michael might need. The room went still. Michael's eyes flicked to me, confused. What are you talking about? I stopped myself. The words were on the tip of my tongue. Your heart, Michael, it's failing, but I swallowed them. Not now, not like this. Instead, I said, you gave away our future. What happens when we need that money? When life throws something at us we can't handle? Michael stood up, his face twisting with anger. You're always so dramatic. Sarah, it's just money. We'll make more. Mom's not getting any younger. If we don't help her now, when will we? I stepped closer, my voice low. We. There's no we in this, Michael. You didn't ask me. You didn't even tell me. You chose her over me. That's when it happened. His hand shot out, grabbing my arm so hard I gasped. Before I could react, he shoved me backward. I stumbled, my foot catching the edge of the staircase behind me. I fell, tumbling down 3 steps, my shoulder slamming into the railing. Pain exploded through my body, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. Helen gasped, but it was fake, theatrical. Oh, Michael, you didn't mean that. I looked up at him, sprawled on the floor, my arm throbbing. His face was flushed, but he didn't move to help me. You need to stop, Sarah, he said, his voice cold. You're making Mom feel like a burden. Apologize. Apologize. I pressed a hand to my bruised shoulder, the pain sharpening my resolve. I stood up slowly, my eyes locked on his. I'm done, Michael, I said, my voice steady despite the tears burning my eyes. I'm done with you. And I'm done with her. I limped to the bedroom, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I need help, I told the operator. My husband just pushed me down the stairs. As I hung up, I heard Helen's voice from the living room, shrill and panicked. Michael, what have you done? She's going to ruin everything. But I wasn't listening anymore. I locked the bedroom door and sat on the edge of the bed, my heart racing. The doctor's words echoed in my head. Severe congestive heart failure. Michael didn't know, and I wasn't going to tell him. Not after this. When the police arrived, Michael's face went pale. This is a misunderstanding, he stammered as they cuffed him. Helen tried her usual tears, clinging to an officer. It's just a marital spat. Couples fight, don't they? The officer, a woman with a no-nonsense stare, cut her off. Ma'am, in this country, pushing someone down the stairs isn't a spat, it's assault. At the station, I pressed charges. I didn't hesitate. I want a restraining order, I told the officer. And I'm filing for divorce. Michael's eyes widened, like he couldn't believe I'd go that far. Sarah, come on, you're overreacting. It was one push. I looked at him, the man I'd loved for 15 years, and saw a stranger. One push, I said softly, was one too many. As we left the station, I made another decision. The house, worth $1.2 million, was in both our names. I'd fight for it. I'd fight for everything I deserved. And I'd keep Michael's secret, letting him and Helen drown in their own mess. Because sometimes, silence is louder than any scream. The weeks after I filed for divorce felt like walking through a fog. I moved out of our house and into my sister's spare room, 40 miles away. The bruise on my shoulder faded, but the ache in my chest didn't. I kept replaying that moment. On the stairs, Michael's hands on me, his eyes cold, Helen's fake gasp echoing in the background. I'd loved him for 15 years, built a life with him, and yet he'd chosen her. Over and over again. But I wasn't broken. Not anymore. I was angry, yes, but I was also free. And I held something they didn't. Michael's medical report, tucked away in my purse like a loaded gun. Severe congestive heart failure. A ticking clock. I hadn't told him. I hadn't told Helen. And as the days passed, I realized I wasn't going to, not out of cruelty, but because they didn't deserve my help. Not after everything. The divorce proceedings moved fast. I hired a lawyer, a sharp woman named Carla who didn't flinch when I laid out the story. Michael's betrayal, the drained savings, the push down the stairs. She looked at me over her glasses and said, Sarah, we're not just getting you out of this marriage. We're getting you everything you're owed. The house was the big fight. It was worth $1.2 million, paid off through years of our shared sacrifices. Michael wanted to sell it and split the money, but I wasn't budging. He stole $250,000 from our joint account. I told Carla, he doesn't get to walk away with half of anything. At the mediation, Michael showed up with Helen in tow, both of them wearing smug grins like they'd already won. Helen sat there, her scarf perfectly draped, dabbing her eyes for effect. Sarah's being unreasonable, she told the mediator, her voice quivering. All I ever wanted was a little comfort in my old age. Is that so wrong? Michael nodded, crossing his arms. She's blowing this out of proportion. I gave Mom some money. So what? It's not like we're broke. Sarah's just greedy. Greedy. The word hit like a slap. I slid a folder across the table, my hands steady. These are the bank records, I said, my voice calm but sharp. 3 years of withdrawals. $250,000, all to Helen, without my knowledge. Without my consent. The mediator's eyebrows shot up. Michael's face turned red, then pale. Helen started to speak, but Carla cut her off. Mrs. Larson, your husband committed financial misconduct. And we have a police report documenting physical assault. If you want to keep your job, Michael, I suggest you agree to Sarah's terms. Michael's jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might crack, but he caved. The house was signed over to me, with a small payout to cover the remaining mortgage. I walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in years, but the real storm was coming. A few days later, I noticed Michael looking off. His face was pale, his breathing heavy. He'd been posting on social media pictures of him at bars, chugging beers, laughing with friends like nothing was wrong. But I could see it in his eyes, the way he moved. His heart was failing him, and he didn't even know. I'd gone to the hospital for a follow-up on my shoulder, and the doctor had pulled me aside again. Sarah, he said, we found a potential donor for Michael. If we act fast, there's a chance. Have you told him about his condition? I shook my head. Not yet. The doctor frowned but didn't push. It's urgent, he said. He needs to start preparing for surgery soon, or it might be too late. I nodded, thanked him, and left. But I didn't call Michael. I didn't text. I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat in silence. Let him figure it out. Let Helen fix it. Then came the twist, the one I didn't see coming. I was at my sister's, sorting through old photos, when my phone buzzed. It was a private investigator I'd hired on a hunch. I'd always wondered about Helen's Florida house. She talked about it constantly, but something never added up. No photos, no address, just vague stories about sunsets and palm trees. So I'd asked him to dig. Sarah, he said, his voice low. There's no house. Helen's been funneling the money to a guy named Mark, a 45-year-old ex-casino worker. He's got a daughter, 22, living with him. Helen's been paying their rent, their bills, everything. They're living off her in a condo in Miami. I sat there, stunned. All that money, our money, hadn't gone to some dream house. It had gone to Helen's boyfriend and his kid. She wasn't sailing the coast for her golden years. She was playing sugar mama to a deadbeat and his daughter? I laughed, a cold, bitter sound. It was almost too perfect. Helen, the martyr, the saintly mother, was a fraud. And Michael had no idea. I could have told him right then. I could have called, laid it all bare, watched his world crumble. But I didn't. I wanted him to find out the hard way. And he did. A week later, I got a call from the hospital. Michael had collapsed at a bar, clutching his chest. They'd rushed him in, run tests, and finally told him the truth about his heart. He was dying, and he needed a transplant fast. I didn't visit, but I heard through a mutual friend that Helen was there, playing the devoted mother, weeping, at his bedside. Then it all fell apart. I was at the grocery store when my phone buzzed again. It was Carla, my lawyer. Sarah, you need to hear this, she said. Michael and Helen got into a fight at the hospital. A big one. He found out about Mark. Apparently, Michael had demanded to know where the money went. Helen tried to dodge, but he kept pushing, and she cracked. She admitted she'd been helping a friend, but Michael wasn't stupid. He dug through her phone, found texts, photos, proof of the condo, the bills, the whole charade. He lost it. Right there in the hospital. He screamed at her, called her a liar, a leech. Nurses had to pull him away. But it didn't end there. A few nights later, Michael tracked Helen down to a parking lot near the hospital. He was desperate, half out of his mind, begging her to get tested as a donor. You're my mother, he shouted, his voice breaking. If you won't give me the money back, at least give me this. Helen laughed in his face. I'm too old, Michael, she said. My heart's not strong enough, and anyway, I've got my own life to live. That's when he snapped. He grabbed her, shook her, and when she tried to pull away, he pushed her to the ground. But Mark was there, waiting in his car. He saw it all, and charged at Michael, tackling him. It turned into a brawl, fists flying, blood on the pavement. By the time security arrived, Michael was unconscious, his heart giving out under the strain. They rushed him back to the hospital, but it was too late. His body couldn't take it. Michael died that night, alone in a sterile room, with no one by his side. Helen survived, barely. She ended up with a broken arm and a concussion, but the real damage was her pride. Mark and his daughter disappeared, taking what was left of her money. She was left with nothing, no son, no boyfriend, no yacht, just a hospital bill she couldn't pay. I didn't feel sorry for her. Or for Michael. They'd built their own cage, locked themselves in, and thrown away the key. And me. I was done carrying their weight. But there was one thing I hadn't expected. As I stood in my sister's kitchen, processing the news of Michael's death, I felt something shift. Not grief, not quite. It was closure. I'd held on to his secret, not to hurt him, but to protect myself. And now, I was ready to let it go. The day I heard Michael was gone, I didn't cry. I thought I would. After 15 years of marriage, you expect some kind of grief, some echo of the love you once had. But all I felt was quiet. Not peace, not yet, but something close. Like the world had finally stopped spinning out of control. I sold the house, a week later. $1.2 million, more than I'd ever imagined holding in my hands. I didn't keep it all for myself. I paid off my sister's mortgage, a thank you for giving me a safe place to land. I set aside a chunk for my parents, who'd spent their lives worrying about me, and the rest. That was for me. For a new start, I packed a suitcase, booked a flight, and headed to Maine with my sister, Laura, and my best friend, Diane. We rented a little cottage by the ocean, the kind with creaky floors and windows that let in the salt air. Every morning, I'd walk along the shore, the waves lapping at my feet, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. We spent our days exploring, wandering through lobster shacks, browsing farmers markets, laughing over glasses of wine as the sun set. Diane would tease me about my terrible sense of direction, and Laura would tell stories about our childhood, the ones I'd forgotten in the haze of my marriage. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since my 20s. Just a journal at first, scribbling thoughts as they came, but those pages became my anchor, a place to pour out the pain, the anger, and, slowly, the hope. One evening, as we sat on the cottage porch, watching the sky turn pink and gold, Laura asked me, "Sarah, do you ever think about him? About what happened?" I took a sip of my wine, letting the question settle. "Sometimes," I said. "But not the way I used to. I don't miss him. I miss who I thought he was. But that man didn't exist." "Not really." Diane reached over, squeezing my hand. "You're stronger than you know, Sarah. You walked away from a nightmare and built this. Look at you now." I smiled, my eyes stinging. She was right. I'd spent years bending, shrinking, trying to keep the peace with Michael and Helen. I'd let their voices drown out my own. But not anymore. I joined a support group when I got back to Portland. Women like me, some older, some younger, all carrying stories of their own. We'd meet every Thursday, sharing coffee and tears, sometimes laughter. I told them about Michael, about Helen, about the money and the stairs and the secret I kept. They listened, nodded, understood. One woman, a grandmother with kind eyes, said something that stuck with me. "You didn't just survive, Sarah. You chose yourself. That's the hardest thing any of us can do." She was right. Choosing myself meant letting go not just of Michael, but of the guilt, the what-ifs, the weight of their chaos. I didn't hate him, not anymore. I didn't hate Helen either. They'd destroyed each other, and in a way, that was justice enough. I heard about Helen through a mutual friend a few months later. She was living in a rundown apartment, her dreams of yachts and luxury gone. Mark and his daughter had vanished, taking what little she had left. She was alone, still playing the victim, telling anyone who'd listen that I'd ruined her life. I didn't care. Her words couldn't touch me anymore. As for Michael's death, I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't need to. Instead, I wrote him a letter not to send, but to set free. "I forgive you," I wrote, "not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to move on." I burned it in the backyard, watching the flames curl the paper to ash. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You can't control what others do to you, but you can control what you carry. I carried Michael and Helen's weight for too long, their lies, their demands, their betrayal. But the moment I let go, I found something better. Me. I'm 52 now, and I'm just getting started. I'm writing more, maybe even a book. Someday, I'm planning a trip to Italy next spring, just because I can. And every day, I wake up knowing I'm enough. So if you're listening, if you're carrying someone else's chaos, hear this. You don't have to stay. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to lose yourself to save someone else. Choose you. It's not selfish, it's survival. And it's the first step to finding peace. I found mine on a beach in Maine, with the waves whispering my name. And I know, wherever you are, you can find yours too.